Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for The Whole Idea, and with me today are two boys that will give us the whole idea of this short, my good friends Luke Perkins and Eli Copperman. Say hi.
Oh, hello there.
Isn't it bad enough down there without her?
So just a few bits of info to get underway. So as mentioned, this is a review for The Whole Idea, released on the 16th of April 1955. It's the 737th in the series, and it's directed by Bob McKimson. You can find this beautiful restoration on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 6 DVD set, and you can find a high-definition version as an extra on the Warner Archive Blu-ray of Pete Kelly's Blues. And I'm not sure if it's on streaming either, it probably is. It will not be on YouTube unless Warner Brothers themselves choose to upload it on their own channel, as it is a copyrighted short. You'll not find it here in this review. But in case you haven't seen this one, you have an inventor inventing the whole, basically, and it's this ingenious contraption where you see it being used for good, but then someone ends up seeing the potential in it to be used for bad or for evil. So, in other words, social media, right? You can see the good, but then a lot of people see the bad.
Looks like Robert McKimson saw what was going to happen in a few decades.
But let's go through some of the trivia, because this one actually has quite a bit. It's just one of those shorts where you can watch it, you don't even need to know any of this and still enjoy it, because it is a solid short like that. But I think it's even more fascinating once you look at some of the references in this one. Starting with the big one. You'll notice in the opening credits that Bob McKimson is the sole animator, and if you look at the animation breakdown, it indeed just says Bob McKimson. So what happened was, in case you're new to the channel, the animation units were all shut down for a period of about 6 or so months because they were retooling for 3D, which never really took off. This short was started on before the shutdown, but then as McKimson was reassembling the unit, he was like, you know what, I'll just animate this myself. And he did. He did everything. And this is one of the shorts that he was absolutely proud of, and I think he's done excellent work here. I'm sure you boys can agree with that.
I think it's one of McKimson's best.
I agree. And considering that he animated the whole thing by himself, he actually started animating it because apparently, and this is according to Devin Baxter's cartoon research article on the short started production in early 1953. Around that time, the shutdown occurred, but McKimson's unit was actually the first to be shut down for financial reasons. Essentially, his animators were all laid off, so he decided, you know what, I'll just animate the whole thing by myself. And considering that his unit was going to shut down anyway, he probably just left it as is. But when he came back, he decided to finish it and continue animating the rest of it on his own. So it's definitely remarkable to see him animate this whole thing, especially in somewhat of a, I don't want to say a full-blown UPA style, but definitely something reminiscent to the more abstract and stylized art direction that was being dominated in the industry thanks to UPA.
It's definitely the style at the time. If you look at a lot of the shorts in lead up to this one, McKimson definitely went in with the whole UPA style, especially with the backgrounds and a lot of the incidental characters as well. I mean, look at Wildlife, for example.
Even if he was someone that had a strong draftsmanship and solidity in his animation, it is admittedly no surprise that he decided to cave into the UPA style.
The layouts and backgrounds by Richard H. Thomas definitely lended themselves to the UPA style pretty well. So it's not like two styles from different artists clashing against each other. Everything seems to fit within its own universe. And there's definitely other cartoons Bob McKimson made in a similar UPA style, but I feel like this is one of the better ones he did in terms of, on one hand, aping that style, but also making it his own thing at the same time.
I personally feel that when Robert McKimson started animating on this short, I think he started to realize, like, wait, this is a really good idea for sure. I need to make the most out of this. And I think that was probably one of the reasons why he solo animated it by himself.
And it's funny, too, because I was aware of the portable hole idea even before I saw the cartoon at a young age, because if anyone has seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit, there's that little Acme portable hole or inflatable hole that they use at first as a gag in one scene, but then Valiant uses during the climax. And I wouldn't be surprised if Robert Zemeckis or the crew behind Roger Rabbit at least got somewhat of inspiration from the short.
They actually did, yeah. Mark Kausler, who was on the crew for Roger Rabbit, he said, yeah, they basically took inspiration from this short, so they actually did, yeah.
Well, there you go.
It's also kind of an end of an era because this short features the last vocal credits for Bea Benaderet, who was mostly well known for Granny by this point in the Sylvester and Tweety shorts, although she did a lot of the women characters, even Witch Hazel in her first appearance in the Chuck Jones short. But she was incredibly popular. She'll eventually be in the hit show Petticoat Junction, and she was in the first 4 seasons of the Flintstones before she got too busy even for that. So Star was definitely rising even further, and even before this, she was a prolific radio actress, so she was definitely in demand. A lot of the women roles will be played by June Foray going forward.
That's right.
So we got other references all throughout. I'll just go through a few of them now and the rest of them as we go through the short. So you'll notice that a few places are shown, which my favorite, of course, is Leaking, Pennsylvania, Leaking Penn, ha, love that one. But there is one that's rather obscure that people may not know, is Old Man M.O., and that is a play on the title of the jazz song Old Man Mose by Louis Armstrong, so there is definitely a connection. Another one that might be lost on people today is the whole reference, There's Bad News Tonight, and I love the voice, by the way, by Mel Blake.
Bad news tonight.
There's bad news tonight.
Love that. And that's a reference to There's Good News Tonight, and that was done by Gabriel Heater in his radio broadcasting. So it definitely had a basis in something, and that was that.
I recognize that phrase from The Stupor Salesman by Art Davis. Well, there's good news tonight. You know that?
There's good news tonight.
And the newsreel, again, for the younger viewers of this review, in case you weren't aware, like you're probably thinking, what on earth is a newsreel? A newsreel is what they would show in the theater or cinema, depending on what part of the world you live in and what they're called, where you would see the news, a few short subjects, and a movie, a cartoon, and so on. So there'll be like a pre-done program, and newsreel was part of it. So here they're actually showing one from Warner Pathé, and at that time, Warner Brothers had purchased the newsreel from RKO. This was in 1947 to do the newsreel, hence why it's called Warner Pathé. And you'll notice that in the credits, you've got there Seltzer. So that's a reference to Warner Brothers producer Eddie Seltzer, and Moray, which is a reference to Norman Moray of the Warner Brothers subject division. Newsreels were starting to be on the way out because they were being supplanted by, of course, television news broadcasts, right? So in the year after this short was released, Warner Brothers would end up discontinuing newsreel production, although overseas newsreels would still actually go on, but Warner Brothers would end up selling it off in the following year. One interesting reference, some mad person has gone into such depth in regards to a newspaper article, because all throughout this short, you will notice there's newspaper clippings designed to fill a page. There's just generic stuff, probably from the Water Club news that was lying around at the time. But one of them showcases a wedding for Patricia Barber and Ronald Bennett. Someone actually looked this up, and apparently this couple stayed married for 65 years until Patricia passed away in 2019. I wonder who's this mad person who found that out. I mean, I salute you, by the way. If you're watching this review, I salute you.
That is such an incredible fact, and also kudos to the happy couple.
We witnessed history in the making, and we weren't even aware of it.
Yeah.
One other thing you might notice in this short, it's a weird hybrid. So you got the modern look of the short. That's undeniable. It's the so-called UPA look, right? But it's got so many vaudeville references in there and tropes, and we'll definitely point them out as we go through them. The police are like the Keystone Cops, which was a series of silence. And by the way, see those if you haven't. Yeah, they're in the public domain. Easy to find. They're hilarious. Yeah, you better watch them. They're great. They're crude in certain ways, but that's part of the charm. They're great otherwise. Because it's pretty much the dawn of film. They're figuring things out. And part of the fun is watching those early silence and being a part of that journey of them discovering how to make comedy funnier and better. So they're great. Definitely worth watching. So in terms of when we first actually saw this short, I first saw this one when it was on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 6. I never saw this one beforehand. And when I saw this, I thought, wow, this is different. This is something rather unique. It's a great idea. And McKimson himself said it was a brilliant idea in an interview. I forgot which person he was being interviewed with him for that. But wow. It's, again, even if you don't know any of those references, it's a solid idea, and it's done really well here. It's well animated. So, yeah, I really like it.
I saw it on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 6 many, many, many years ago when I was a little kid. And I remember being, I wouldn't say blown away by it, but it was definitely very intriguing short. like nothing I had ever seen before. And I thought long and hard about it after many, many years, especially getting more into the Looney Tunes stuff, that, yeah, this is a very unique short, and it might be one of my favorite cartoons from Robert McKimson, if not one of my favorite Looney Tunes shorts of all time.
Well, when I first met Eli, I was getting more into the Looney Tunes by 2019. I was watching a bunch of stuff I had never seen, listening to some of the audio commentaries, and then I somehow got to watch the whole idea. I remember because when I was starting to get into Looney Tunes, Robert McKimson was a director I started to defend a bit more because, yeah, some of his cartoons might not be particularly ambitious, but on a good day, there are some pretty good ones. But I definitely do think, especially after rewatching it now, it's one of his best cartoons.
And then we'll go through why. Like, I reckon from start to finish, we'll go through everything and, yeah, see why this one is so revered. Starting with, I just like how the very beginning is very stark. Like, it's just red. I thought that was a very interesting way to open things. Like, just red and white outlines and some black. I think it was a bit overpowering, in my opinion. This is probably the weakest shot of the whole short, in my opinion. But it's interesting that they went this way.
It's definitely a unique choice. As far as flashback sequences go, like, I've never seen it executed like that, but I imagine that McKimson and maybe Richard Thomas, though credited as not only the background artist, but he also simultaneously did the layouts. I guess they wanted to go with that to give a stark contrast between the past and the present.
Yeah.
And I do agree, it's definitely the weakest shot in the short, but that's not saying a whole lot. It doesn't look bad. It just looks kind of odd to an extent.
I think it looks neat to me. Like, it's just one whole color throughout with some white and black lines, but yet it's very easy to follow. Though, admittedly, the weakest shot does have one of the weaker jokes in the cartoon.
The unfortunate joke being the caveman knocking out a woman and dragging her to a cave trope, which was just about everywhere.
Disney did that a few times, too. They even did it in Two Whistle Plunk and Boom, somehow.
And even Chuck Jones did that gag in the Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner movie, although he did put a little bit of a twist on it with the foist woman's lover and the foist woman's lid or something. So it's not that bad.
So we end up going to a nice shot of the city. So it's a very modern looking. I like the look of it. It's not quite what Frisch Freeling was doing, for example, but it still has a nice look to it. So it's a nice pan. Not really much animated, but it does the job of taking us to the quote-unquote modern day, aka 1950s. And we go to a house and we see a scientist, Professor Calvin Q. Calculus, which is an interesting name.
What a
because the only
name.
calculus I know of that's a professor is Professor Calculus from Tintin, but that's another thing entirely. But one other voice credits here is Robert C. Bruce. He does the actual narration of this short. So he's the third voice actor here. And Mel Blanc does everything else, including the baby later on. So how about that? So, you know, Calculus successfully creates a portable hole invention. And hey, it's actually an interesting idea. I mean, I'm not sure how it's supposed to work, how he's supposed to lift it, whatever. But I guess if you think too much into the logics behind it, you'd go mad, okay?
Personally, if a portable hole was a real thing, I feel like you have to hold it from the back so that your fingers don't go through the other center.
Yeah, I think if we overthink this, it ain't gonna go well for our mental states, so we won't.
I did it, I did it, I did it, I did it! Gertrude, come quickly. I've done it.
What have you done?
At last, at long last, I have succeeded.
Well, what have you invented this time?
A portable hole.
So, of course, we see that Calculus is a short guy, and I've noticed that Sid Marcus, whenever he writes a story, he seems to like having diminutive characters. So he would have one diminutive Native American in one short, and a few things in Walter Lantz. I don't know. He seems to like diminutive characters.
I'm sure he definitely had a few, even in some of the Screen Gems cartoons that he would do some story and direction too.
But we see the design of the wife, and yes, this whole nagging wife subplot, yes, it's your typical, oh yeah, the wife, she brings up a legitimate concern, she's doing all the work and that while the man gets to do whatever he wants, in this case, inventing, right? So it's a legitimate thing. But she's designed, of course, she has to look ugly, because she has to, of course. It's a vaudeville trope, okay? That would be in a lot of vaudeville acts, the so-called nagging wife or nagging mother-in-law, that kind of thing.
Portable hole? You and your silly inventions. Now you listen to me. I slave to keep a roof over this house while you waste time with those idiotic ideas of yours. First it's dry water, and then round squares, and now portable holes.
If there's any genuine flaw I have with this short, not just the misogyny. So Gertrude complains to Calvin, "You never say anything nice to me. You forget our wedding anniversary." That's all talk and no show. And, it's a short film. I'm not expecting it to cover everything in a short amount of time, but Calvin at no point shows any emotion beyond meekness or like excitement or anything. Like we never see him look like a jerk to her.
And the crazy thing is that when he invents the hole, he's really excited because he feels like that her wife would probably be impressed by this invention.
Wouldn't that be a nice shakeup to the formula just once? Honestly,
I guess so. But anyway, it's a trope, and that's what they were going for.
I'm getting mighty sick of it all. You don't care anything about me. You forget our wedding anniversary. You never say anything nice to me. I'm weary and tired of being a lovely, sweet, silent wife to you. And one of these days, mark my words, you're going to regret it. Do you hear me? You are going to regret it.
So we then see a newspaper, and we even see like a turn-of-century newsboy, extra, extra, and so on. And as we know, there's nothing special in this newspaper, but it does the job in moving the story along, and that's the important thing. But we end up going into a theater, and we're watching the newsreel, which I've already explained earlier on. This is the funny thing. This is the so-called positive aspects of the whole. And it's just weird how they twist the word positive in a different way. So in one of the gags, you have the guy escaping doing the dishes. So that's seen as like a positive.
Henry, come dry the dishes.
It's like, I don't know how that's going to go afterwards when he comes back. Oh, where were you? Oh, I just went through the hole. I didn't want to do the dishes. I don't know how well that's supposed to work, but it's just such a weird gag, and that's why I love it. It's just so stupid. I love it.
You see the professor showing how the portable hole works, and you see that the background is a mix between some characters sticking to the background color, while some characters have a lighter shade.
No, it's a really interesting design choice. And I mean, this isn't explored all the time in McKimson's cartoons, but every now and then you'll see him experimenting with different techniques and methods, and it looks really fascinating.
And part of the fact that with McKimson being the sole animator, you definitely want to make his job a little bit easier, because he was a fast animator. He really was a very fast guy.
Oh, yeah.
But even he has his limits, yeah? So, there have to be some shortcuts made, which is fair enough.
Speaking of someone who's made short films, like, you have to make sacrifices no matter what if you're going to meet the deadlines.
But one other thing I wanted to point out with that whole guy escaping doing the dishes, look at that picture, that supposed painting. We were talking about calculus earlier on. Someone's got a framed picture of math sums. I don't get it. Straps.
I don't either. I think it's funny, though.
Somebody actually thought, yeah, I'm going to buy this and hang it up on my wall. But anyway, next gag, we see a dog. We also hear, where's my little dog gone? Because, of course, you're going to hear that. I mean, this was scored by Milt Franklin, who didn't really do much by way of musical puns. But here it actually does quite a few, and that's one of them.
I always thought that gag was not only one of the most clever gags in the short, but also just a clever usage of the whole in general, because I think, like, dogs in general, if they dig up a bone, they might get paranoid about someone taking it. So that dog was right on the money. It's like, I can bury my bone and also keep it.
I also got to admit that the animation of the dog in slow motion, because the dog is on all fours, it's actually a very well animated dog. You can tell it was animated by a guy who did actually study art and anatomy. And the dog walk is very well studied.
But
it's very caricatured, but very well
100%.
studied.
And McKimson would end up reusing that dog design in a few other shorts as he goes along as well. It's a great design. I like it. It also encourages people to cheat at golf. And again, I don't know how this is a positive overall. I mean, maybe to the player, but yeah, it's... I don't know. Something tells me the PGA Tours and all, I wouldn't allow that sort of thing. Just a hunch. It's cheating at golf. But yeah, it's clever, though. It is clever. Now, you do have to wonder, though, in the next shot, how did a baby get locked in the safe?
That is a very good question, and you could have a million different answers.
When we see the professor, he shows up and saves the baby, showing what a hero he is. And ends up getting an award as well. I'm not sure what the award is. I couldn't quite hear what it was and what it's referencing to. So anyone that knows, Definitely let me know in the comments. That's homework for you guys watching this. Wahaha.
Calculus receives the Mo Ball Award.
Speech. Ladies and gentlemen, I invented the portable hole for the good of humanity. But let us all hope it will never be used for evil purposes.
But as with any good idea or invention all throughout mankind, there's always going to be someone exploiting it. Cough, social media, cough. But anyway, we have this unnamed thief who ends up being named later on the Holy Terror, which, beautiful. Gotta love the Holy Terror.
These hole puns are just pouring out like pancakes.
Holy moly, there's a lot of holy puns here.
There's a really funny shot of the Holy Terror walking out of the theater. You just see him walking, and there's one bit where he trips and falls, and then he just walks back up.
To me, that's just McKimson showing off, just going, hey, you know what? I'm just going to put it in there. He didn't have to. I mean, he's the director. He could have told himself no, I suppose.
It's like the little things.
This thief somehow knows where this professor lives, because he does, and ends up stealing the holes for himself.
I also love the background of that is present when the Holy Terrorist is stealing the whole bag. And it's just two colors. There's just one color for the wall, and for the other side of the wall, and it's just black and gray with black and white outlines. It just looked so good. I wish I could make backgrounds like that.
I love that. Yeah, it's like you don't even have to animate anything. Just have that one shot of the professor sleeping in bed with the holes, and the only bit of animation is the Holy Terror stealing the bag of holes.
Let this be a lesson to a few up-and-coming animators. Definitely make good use of simplicity.
So now we see the bad side of having such a hole, and already a lot of people might think, yeah, you can use it for the things like stealing money and so on, which is exactly what the criminal does. So we do see that a bank is actually robbed. We've seen this gag so many times, right? I think Tex Avery originated it. The whole thing where you see the value of the bank, it gets robbed, and the value gets rubbed off.
I love the extra detail of the bank literally being called Last Bank. Like, not First National Bank or Worst National Bank, just Last Bank. I don't know why, but that makes me giggle.
But to be fair, people might put their money in the last bank because they'll know that the first bank gets robbed first. He's chased by the police, and they end up falling through one of the holes, which again, this is clearly the Keystone Cops, or at least inspired by him, clearly. The newspapers all now blame the hole instead of the person using it. Does that sound familiar? Of course it does, you know, hint, hint.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you blame the person instead of the tool, of course we do. But anyway, I love the different evil uses of the hole, including Fort Knox with the comically large piles of gold, and putting on my overthinking hat. That gold would be so heavy that truck would not even be able to move. I mean, that's some truck if it could move all that gold.
I'm just imagining throughout this sequence, like with the montage, while the guy is still doing all the horrible stuff like robbing banks and stuff, you still cut to the truck carrying all that gold, which is so heavy.
I mean, how the heck did he even load up that truck by himself? But anyway,
the logic of cartoon logic is something never to break down.
Yeah, we'll say a wizard did it, so there's my Simpsons reference. Anyway, so things look incredibly hopeless. We see the newscaster and everything, as we've already mentioned the reference before, and he even kidnaps a burlesque girl. Whoa, the naughty boy.
Well, of course he would use it for sexual harassment.
Of course he would. But now he has the money, now he's got the power, and now he's going to have the women. See, you know, there's my Scarface reference. So there you are. We somehow got that in there, right? But he kidnaps the woman, but of course he ends up being caught out. The weirdest gag in this one has to be the train gag. He puts the hole in, and somehow there's a train going through, but he continues on, and the passengers are just there all calm, thinking, yeah, this is all normal.
I love the design of the passengers on the train. It reminds me of illustrations you'd see in children's books.
Definitely.
Oh, it's such a surreal gag that you can't help but laugh at it. Even Disney actually used that train gag in the Donald Duck and Humphrey the Bear cartoon Barely Asleep by Jack Hanna. They used that train gag.
Nice.
And the police continue to chase this bad guy, and I love that one great shot of hundreds and hundreds of officers just all there. It's like, yeah, there's literally no other crimes happening. We're just going to focus all our resources on this one guy.
This dude's stealing money from everywhere, you know?
And Fort Knox. And we get a nice little payoff where the Holy Terror is running around. Beautiful backgrounds once again. Very children book-like, very UPA. And we get the punchline at the end where he uses the hole to escape, the very last one he has, and he goes into the prison. It would actually be nice if we could have a follow-up short detailing what this court case would actually be like, you know, the exhibits with the hole and that, and he ends up escaping again, but that ain't gonna happen, so we'll move on. Alright, so the professor reads about the arrest and says, good.
Holy terror captured. Good. Serves him right. Crime does not pay.
And that newspaper, by the way, that definitely is from a Warner News article. That has to be because of the references to Warner Brothers movie making in there. As to which issue, don't ask me because that will take so long to figure out. But anyway. Alright, so he tells the audience that crime does not pay, but the wife goes on about the whole vaudeville trope. Oh, you don't treat me right, I'm doing everything, blah, blah, blah. So the professor ends up using a hole, effectively killing his wife. You got to figure out the logic in this too, because when the dog buried his bone in this way, wouldn't the bone have gone down to hell? Yeah, anyway, I don't want to overthink that. But anyway, okay, back to this, because otherwise we'd go mad. But no, it's great. Actually, I think the final punchline, I think it was funny. Like, you know, is it dated? Would you do it now? No, but I thought it was great.
It's definitely an outdated joke, but I do like the delivery of that line. And I love the design of the devil there. I love how pathetic he looks.
I was going to say that.
He looks so funny.
But again, it's a great way to end the short. We've got a nice, strong punchline, because I noticed that in a few Sid Marcus shorts, he doesn't quite end the shorts very strongly, but this one he definitely does. And yeah, it's a nice way to wrap it all up. Again, is it problematic? Perhaps, yes, but it's still, in terms of the logic of the short, it's still a good little punchline, so we're in there.
It's a really fascinating concept, executed very well. Robert McKimson was definitely at his A game, even in spite of being laid off and then finishing it after being brought back on. It's really remarkable that he was able to animate the whole thing by himself. And also, I wish Eddie Seltzer had actually put the short in for submission at the Academy Awards, because man, this would have been a great addition to the Academy Award nominations, let alone amongst the cartoons being inspired by UPA at the time.
Yeah, would it have won? That would have been an interesting thing to ponder.
It probably still would have lost to Speedy Gonzales, but make no mistake, and we haven't gotten to that one yet, but that's a great cartoon as well, so no issue there. I'd give it like a 9 out of 10, honestly. Like, the one thing that does hold it back is the misogyny jokes here and there, but honestly, it's definitely very close to a 10, making no mistake. This is McKimson truly lending his talents to such an abstract concept, and he definitely went out with a bang here. You could argue that this is the end of his golden era, because after the shutdown, he would make like arguably worse cartoons than this, but we'll get to those when we get to those. I think it's a very underrated short and definitely one of his best.
You took the words right out of my mouth, EC, but yeah, I actually really love the whole idea. It's a very terrific short, great idea, some great direction. And outside of the misogyny, it's still a fantastic short. You can definitely feel that Robert McKimson was definitely feeling very confident just from the idea alone, that he knew that this idea would work very well. And I think it actually paid off very successfully. I'm definitely giving it a 9 out of 10.
Same, 9 out of 10 for me. I think, yeah, just a few things holding it back, but make no mistake, this is a great short. This is one of McKimson's finest, and some might even argue it's a sort of a swan song, but there are some shorts he does after this, which I think were pretty good. Just they come few and far between, unfortunately. So that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.
My, that was a big one.
My, that was a deep one, wasn't it?
Isn't it bad enough down there without her?